We are going to time travel a little bit in this episode. Imagine being a 9-year-old girl running home from school, throwing your Jansen book bag on the floor, and scurrying around the house looking for a Reader's Digest. In the 1970s, about 17 million Reader's Digests were published. That blows my mind. Back in the 70s, you didn't have a phone to scroll on, friends to text. Matter of fact, you had to hope that no one was using the one phone in your house to call someone, because if they were, you had to wait for them to be finished. And even if you had more than one phone, you still had to wait for them to be finished, because if you had two phones, they were all hooked up to the same line. So that was the fun thing sometimes. If you had two phones in your house, you could have one person on one phone in the living room and another person on another phone in the kitchen, and you could be talking to the same person on your two phones on the same line. But this 9-year-old girl was so excited because she knew that the Reader's Digest was at the house and it was a new one and she hadn't read it yet. And that to her was entertainment. She would read the personal stories, and at 9 years old, some of the stories might have been a little too mature for her, but that was okay because she was going to read that whole entire Reader's Digest from front to back. And she couldn't take it away if it was new because her dad would flip out. So she had to always sneak in. If he wasn't home, she had to read it before him. And a lot of times, if he got his hands on it, he would not let it go until he was done with it. So, or he just wanted to read it before anybody else read it. So that was, sadly, this 9-year-old little girl's joy. But the reason I'm telling you that story is because this is actually what I want my podcast to be like. I want you to listen to my podcast and hear personal stories. And when I do start interviewing people, I want to interview people that are real, that are not the specialist or the most published person or the guru on this topic or that topic. I want it to be a person who has really lived the experience and can tell you a story about it. So I was trying to think this week, and I want this to be a real lighthearted, quick episode into Stand Up and Redo, because I'm going to have some really heavy ones coming out about drug addiction. And I think this is just light, simple, short. So this is going to be the shortest episode I've had so far. And but I just want to talk to you about my mission. I'm excited about sharing this podcast with you. I really do want to make it for you. I want to make it about you. And what I mean about that is that I want, maybe even if not every story touches you in the way that you can relate to it, I want you to feel like, oh my gosh, I've been through that, or wow, I know a person that has struggled with that same problem, or felt joy with something amazing that they can celebrate. I just want it to be real stories with real people. And that's what Reader's Digest did. They brought into your home, into my home, into my life when I was a child, stories about people from Wisconsin or California or another country, and that was so foreign to me. And it was so neat because I got to learn these personal stories about mothers, fathers, teenagers, business people that were adventurists, people that had gotten themselves into situations or experienced something that was just so unique or challenging for them to get through. And that's exciting for me to share with you, because I feel like everybody should have a person to connect with. And when you go on, first I want to tell you my favorite podcasts, and the one person that got me most into podcasts was listening to Andrew Huberman. And I love science, and I love health, and I love your body. I'm a nurse, and the reason I got into being a nurse was because I just love movement, physiology, and anatomy, and then your brain, how it works. And I think it was just so, that's what I loved about listening to Andrew Huberman, is everything he brought to the table was science-based. And he interviews just the most interesting people. And then I love Mel Robbins too, because she really finds the specialist that has written a book, or, just has done a lot, or is a psychiatrist, or someone that's just done a lot of research, or is basically knows the most about the topic. She brings that person in, and I love that. And then my last favorite podcast, which I think these are really popular, and a lot of you will be familiar with all these podcasts, is Stuff You Should Know. And I just started listening to that recently. I didn't even know that was, I think I skimmed past that and saw some of the things that these guys are talking about and thought, oh my gosh, it looks so, forgive me for saying this, but dumb. But now that I've started listening to them, oh my gosh, they'll do like a topic on just being a widow, or the most interesting, odd topic. And it takes you, first, it really teaches you about history, because they teach you about things that you didn't even know happened. And their show is just, you have to, if you haven't listened to that, you have to listen to Stuff You Should Know. But for me, as I was thinking about a podcast, I knew I wanted to do a podcast. And I kept comparing myself to these really successful people who have podcasts. And then even then listening to all different podcasts. I like this guy, Darren O'Lean, for a little while. I just have gone back and forth with listening to all different ones, and came to this conclusion. This podcast is going to be from me. It's just going to take on my personal style, my personality, the way I present things. And I'm learning. I've liked to just share stories and listening to other people's stories through life, whether it be me as a nurse listening to an older person tell what it was like when they were a child. One of the things I like to ask people who are really old, 80s, 90s, I would always just banter with them and lightheartedly ask them, hey, what's your secret to staying so healthy and getting so old? Because a lot of them that were that old were pretty healthy until that point. And it was really neat to hear what they would say. They would all say different things, usually, and they were really, really open to share. Sometimes they would say, I walk every day 2 miles, or every day at 4:00 I have a highball before dinner, or I smoke 1 cigar a day. I mean, it was really interesting what these people shared. And but I loved hearing about them personally, because also asking them that question gave them they were more of a person to me, not just a patient that was sick that I had to take care of. It made them more relatable, and I loved hearing their stories. And I loved just listening to stories even when I was a kid. If a teacher would start to tell a story about their life or something that happened to them at home, it just, I don't know, it pulls you in. It makes them relatable. It makes them a person of interest. So I'm going to share a mission statement for this podcast eventually, because I feel like this is a little thing still in progress. But I do know what I want to present as time goes on in these podcasts. It will be stories about people. It will be stories from me mostly in the beginning, and then as time goes on, of course, I'm going to have to pull in other people, because my gosh, how much about my life can you hear about? So eventually it'll be that. And before I get off this little recording for this particular episode, I want to share with you something funny. I took my son to dinner the other day for his birthday. He's 29 years old. I can't believe it. But I took him to dinner. And while we were sitting there, he was saying he had started listening to my podcast a little bit. I was really excited. And his girlfriend really liked it, which made me feel good. So he told me, he goes, Mom, so did you change the name of your podcast to Laying in Bed? I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you're just doing these like laying in bed at night. And he goes, I think you should just change it to Laying in Bed. And then he goes, I think you should make your first video podcast. You just laying in bed there, sitting there with a glass of wine, saying, welcome. And I said, first off, I don't lay in bed with a glass of wine. I said, secondly, I'm not going to make my first video me laying in bed talking, but I have done a lot of these podcasts just late at night or early in the morning when I wake up because I work, I'm a working person, and I do these podcasts sometimes at night, laying in bed at like 10 o'clock just before I fall asleep. So you probably are like, oh my gosh, is this girl on downers when I talk? Because I do sound like I'm falling asleep. And then sometimes I do them like right now, early in the morning when I wake up at like 5 o'clock. So I am laying in bed often. The first one I did in a closet in the Hilton because I wanted it to be really quiet. And I came back, from dinner and showered and went to bed, was going to go to bed and thought, I want to make this podcast, my first one. I want no background noise, and you could kind of hear some of the traffic outside. So I actually there's this giant closet in the Hilton, and I laid in the closet with a pillow and just recorded, and that was really neat because it keeps you focused too. But anyway, I'm excited to share these podcasts with you. I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to say thank you. I am so happy that you're listening to these podcasts. And the next series is, it's still Stand Up Redo, but it's going to be at least 2 parts, possibly 3. My gosh, maybe even 4 on drug addiction. So stay tuned. That's coming out very soon. And thank you for spending time with me. I appreciate it.